Welcome, non-Western art appreciation class. I hope you are doing fantastically well. Greetings from my favorite spot on earth. This is Machu Picchu in actually Peru, in the middle of the Andes Mountains, part of the Incan Empire. This class, as we're kind of introducing it, will star not just me, but also you. In fact, more you. We want you to actually be the active participant that shows up as we look at the non-Western world. Now, this course, as you can see from the slide here, this course is a survey of the impact of world arts from humanity's beginning to our modern world, specifically in the non-Western world. And that non-Western world basically means not in the ancient Roman or Greek tradition that basically becomes Christianity and the white colonization that generally happens in most parts of the world. Now, what's amazing about this is this forms the majority of the world, and yet it's part of the world that we've almost never studied before. Isn't it ironic that we want you to compete in a global element against the world superpowers of China and a rising superpower of India, both who outnumber us in population 5-1 and 4-1 respectively. And yet we don't actually teach you anything about those cultures. And so we really do need to get us kind of a grip on where we sit in terms of kind of the world and in terms of kind of superpower status, because we need to educate you for this globalized world. So when we look at this class is designed as a general education class, which basically means that the things that we will be learning in this class will be transferable to many different disciplines, many different aspects of your life in the future. So we will be looking at the derivation of various, not just world arts and cultures and religions, but also the impact it has on the global world and the impacts it has in the modern day world that you all live and habit and hopefully will travel through. So we need to figure out some of these things that actually happen up here. So we are going to wonder why is Chinese pasta Italy's national dish? If you don't know, pasta is actually invented in China. It's not in Italy until much, much later, thousands of years later. Disney's idea about animation derived from where? What does it mean to be a global citizen? Then art appreciation is the class for you. Now, what I want to emphasize as we're going through this class is that my pedagogy is the following. I want to create an environment that allows you to take risks to make the world better in whatever way that you actually so choose in your semester-long project. We're going to make this a very interactive education. And so I'm expecting you to do the reading and a lot of the video screening before we ever get to class. And then when you come to class, we can actually have conversations and questions and kind of working through the issues together as we piece together what the world truly looks like. Not the world you've been taught, but what the world actually truly looks like. And as you'll learn very early on in this semester, as we do a Village of 100 exercise, most of you do not know much about the world at all. It's not your fault. It means that our education system has largely failed to prepare you for a globalized world. All of your learning will be based upon neuroscience. Every summer, I spend my summer reading neuroscience pedagogy and travel and working overseas doing human rights work in Africa and various other parts around the world. While I'm doing that, I'm redesigning the class almost every semester to get kind of an overview of kind of neuroscience pedagogy, how to make you learn better, how to make you think better, how to actually make sure that you understand the world at large. Your grade is largely going to be based in daily assignments rather than tests. I don't really like the idea of giving tests as a majority of a grade, because what most people will do is they will cram for the test, they will learn the information for the test, and they will regurgitate that information of the test. 3 days later, they will have lost 75% of that information. That's not true learning. So we're going to basically have a grade that's based upon portfolio based. You will be doing readings and videos and quizzes and conversations within class, and you'll slowly be developing a grade over time so I can prove that you've actually learned the material over time. And the last thing, this class is fun. We're going to do a fair number of interactives that show up, and the more interactives that you want to do, even better. We can do an interactive for actually every different culture that we're studying. Now, my goals for you, and this is true of any of my classes, the first interactive is that your voice, your life actually matter, and you can change the world, no matter if that's in a small kind of component or whether you want to make larger changes that show up. Every year at Miami-Dade College, we have students that do Clinton Global Initiative University issues that help more than 1,000 people at a spot. We have individuals that do academic service learning that might help 20 to 30 different people that they're working with. We have individuals that actually are doing better to actually raise the quality of education, and also the quality of life for their family. All those changes actually matter and help the world become better. We want to also develop you into a better creative thinker and problem solver. You will be watching a video each week called College Info Geek. And in our lovely College Info Geek, we will be teaching you about different aspects on how to study, how to manage your time, how to get over if you are really bored by a particular class. So we'll give you hints, not that you can not just apply in terms of our wonderful experience here in our class, but in any other class or in the job market. And lastly, we need to analyze how art impacts the world, and the human creative condition is what drives humanity forward in both the arts and in the sciences. So what this class demands is this: a belief that you can make the world better, or at least a willingness for me to convince you of such. A willingness to be interactive. If you do have social anxiety disorder, by all means, please let me know so we can make alternative arrangements. Class time without your cell phone. Turn them off, put them away. Otherwise, you're not really concentrating on class. And 3 to 4 hours outside per week of work, depending on how fast you read, how fast you actually take notes on video screenings that you'll be doing. The benefits of the class, and my goodness, I do not want my face to be the one blocking Gandhi. Gandhi should absolutely be seen over Fraser. The benefits of the class. The world will be a little bit better based upon your semester-long project that you'll be working on. You're going to develop skills to become more effective in life, from study to time management to creative critical thinking and problem solving, to have a better understanding of the way the world really works. You're going to have better mental health, particularly because we're going to take the nationalized midterm and final exam in this particular class to make sure that you can compete with the very best schools in the country who are also taking non-Western humanities or non-Western arts class. And finally, we're going to understand how the way and the world really works. And we're going to use art as our primary focus within this class. Now, throughout the semester, one of the things I love, because you're in the humanities course, is that you get to challenge me and you get to challenge the ideas that I'm presenting. I will never be reticent or negative about those ideas. Largely, I might say, all right, this has been disproven, and give you the background information. But at any point that you want, by all means, you should feel free to challenge me the same way that we actually do Pokemon Shout, throw down the gauntlet, and we can actually let our Pokemon fight within the process. So here's me versus Ash. Of course, Ash probably going to win. Excuse me, with lovely Pikachu that shows up. One of the reasons I love teaching this class is because I firmly believe this, that the arts are a vital part of your education that shows up. And not just the arts, but specifically the non-Western arts. This class, we will be going over cultures that most of you have never studied before, which means that we are going to open up a whole can of worms on how other people around the world live, work, function, survive. And so number 10 up here, why are the arts important to your education? It really does give us an overview of human accomplishments and creativity. We generally talk about that in the science. Hey, look what Fulton did with the steam engine, or Eli Whitney with the cotton gin, or Ford with the automobile and the manufacturing plant. We very seldom do that with the arts. And the arts are as important driving individuals forward and cultures forward as any other individual, whether that's religion, whether that's philosophy, whether that's science, whether that's technology. In fact, in many cases, many people have said, and I think it's an apt statement, that science and technology are what make life survivable in new worlds. The arts are what it makes it livable. On some level, playing off the idea that the art is what we enjoy, right? The art is what we kind of play off on, whether it's the art of sport that we see, whether it's a martial art, whether it's a culinary art, whether it's painting, whether it's actually creating films. The arts are what make life worth living. That makes us, on some of our human creativity, makes us radically different than almost any other animal species that basically has no creativity. Most species even have tools. Almost no other species makes art that we can identify. Number 9, we're going to predict the future development in art, culture, and politics. Why? Because we're going to learn about what's happening from the past, what's happening today, and that helps us predict where we're going to go in the future, provided we don't have some outbreak like Corona that makes things unpredictable in the future. Generally, most things are actually predictable over time. Number 8, we're going to illustrate the development of societal issues from the past to today. And so we're going to be able to talk about the American debt crisis, the birth of sexism and what that means in different cultures, what that means also for you working in different culture, whether you're male or female, economic policies that show up, cultural morality, women's rights. So what I love about number 8 is the fact that art really very much combines all the different elements. If you truly want to understand art, you have to know integrated learning like nobody's business. Number 7, I'm going to give you a useful overview of world history. Rather than giving you, oh, this happened in this particular date and this happened, we're going to talk about the conceptual framework on how the world changes, why people think the way they do, how people are manipulated about particular facts and ideas from history, and really how we sell history and art on both sides, on the positive winning side and on the negative losing side, even if one happens to be better than the other. We're going to look at the overview of world history and how that plays out. So you'll have a useful overview at the end of this class. We're going to teach multicultural awareness as humans have common concerns and needs, but different responses. One of the things that often challenges people in this class is like, oh, how could they do that? Ooh, that's disgusting. How could they drink the blood of a cow from a Maasai warrior? Well, that is the highest form of iron content that they have from a fresh source that the cow really doesn't need. So even though we might find it disgusting, there is a reason. So this brings us to the idea of multicultural awareness. When we look at things, almost all human civilizations and people, we care about the same thing. We want our families to be happy and healthy. We want our kids to have a better life. We're willing to give up a little bit of our good life to actually make our children's life better. We want to move and live in a peaceful environment or be able to protect our family. We have radically different ways based upon economics, culture, politics to do this, but we all have those common concerns, but different responses. Number 5, we're going to talk about teaching creativity and critical thinking. Remember, generally on average, for a short time, you remember 80% of what you see and only 20% of what you read. And so we really do live in a visual, overwhelming culture. So we need to learn how do we bring that information and kind of codify it with the information that we have before in creative new ways, because most of these cultures we've never studied before. And if we have studied, it might be that you didn't get the exact right information that shows up. Number 4, we're going to critique societal failures and their impact on culture. I do not want to go through this class and say, oh, look how awesome the Chinese are, what they were able to do with the Great Wall of China, the magnificence, the tomb of the Qin Shi Huangdi's emperor, the first emperor of China, the terracotta warriors, how awesome. We've also got to talk about the shortcomings as well. All cultures have positives and negatives, same way as the United States. We can say Constitution guaranteeing human rights, that are guaranteed by God. What a unique, wonderful feature that leads us to a republic and a representative democracy that makes us better. It also actually means that women are not going to get the right to vote for many, many years. Only about 100 years ago, African Americans are going to be blocked out. So there's a positive and negative, and it's only fair if we look at cultures from both lenses. So we're not just going to look at the positive, we have to look at the overall. Number 3, we're going to learn your own personal aesthetic that will impact 75% of your economic decisions in the future, from clothing, music, jewelry, hairstyles, body decoration, potentially even a different car color or decoration, depending upon how much money you have to spend. It could impact 75% of your economic decisions. The sooner we start developing our economic, the less mistakes we're going to make. Number 2, you're going to learn to know when and how you are being visually manipulated. An artist's job is to visually manipulate you. That is their job. Or unless you're a musician, then it's to orally kind of manipulate you to do something, to think something, to feel something. And 84% of our communication in the modern day world is visual. So that could be visual cues you're receiving from someone else, could be visual cues from an advertisement, from a movie, from an ad, from a dance that you're seeing in front of you. And finally, number 1, I think the most important thing, we're going to analyze the way the world really works through integrated learning, which is what art requires. You've got to know how art, science, culture, religion, economics, philosophy, psychology, politics, sometimes medicine or herbal medicine, how they all interact to get a cohesive whole onto understanding the arts of each culture. And that makes it truly unique. If you go to in a science class, you really are going to be studying chemistry. Very seldom are we going to say, all right, how does chemistry and biology relate? Unless you're taking a biochem class and you've already had the basics of each class together. Here I'm telling you, you've got to take all the knowledge you have and put all sorts of new things together to get a cohesive understanding of the way the world works. Now, as we look at this is a brief history of me and my biography that shows up. We'll talk more about this in the future, but one of the top things for students to get actually engaged in a class is actually to engage with the professor a little bit. My true passion is traveling, so I travel whenever I possibly can. I've been to more than 100 countries now. If you think about it, there's only 196 or 197 countries on the planet, depending on who's doing the counting, whether it's us or China. I get to be a United Nations consultant, so I've traveled the world, specifically doing genocide research in Africa, and so been to Rwanda, Sudan. I've become a Disney consultant, so whenever Disney needs help um, on a project they're doing that deals with non-Western cultures, African, Oceanic, pre-Columbian art. I get called in to actually be the cultural consultant. We'll talk more, and potentially your midterm will even entail you doing an activity that makes you a cultural consultant, at least on one particular film. And so, if you've seen recently the film Black Panther, you've seen the Infinity War by Avengers, you saw the movie Hotel Rwanda, the HBO special that ran a number of years ago called the Tinga Tinga Tales. So I've got to be the cultural consultant on all of those. And I've been awarded the Lifetime Presidential Service Award by President Obama. I actually have two Lifetime Service Awards that were for my different work overseas, particularly with the United Nations in East Africa. Now, as we look at this, I also want to show you, go to my new share. Oh, the other one is not there right now. Never mind. We'll close out of that one. Give it a minute to load up. There. As we're thinking and starting to think through the class, one thing that you need to do is order the book pretty quickly. And that's because we're going to have readings that are going to be mandatory that actually will look at your notes throughout the term. You are going to do what's called Gardner's Art Through the Ages, Non-Western Perspectives by Fred Kleiner. I do not care which edition you get. Any edition from 12 to 14 will work. I need you to buy it cheap. There's no reason for you to buy the brand new edition that's all covered, that has lovely layouts. Buy it cheap, save your money for something else. The editions and the little known kind of history of textbooks is that the editions do not change that much, particularly when we get to the 12th to 14th edition, unless some new pedagogical research comes out or some new kind of technology comes out or something gets radically innovated. The information is not that different. And I can easily give you the information as it's updated between the 12th to the 14th edition. There will not be that much. So buy the book cheap. My favorite books are those books where you buy the book and you spend more on shipping than you actually do on the book. Save your money. Buy the cheap textbook in any kind of capacity you want. If you want to have the online version, you're more than welcome to use the online version. At no point will you need extra codes that go along with it. I've embedded all that information already into my course in Blackboard. What most people want to know from the very get-go, particularly, is how do I do well? So in my class, as you notice up here, the class is based on a point scale. And so everything that you turn in every week, I'll be looking at a couple of things from you, will actually give you points. And those points eventually will raise the average. So if you're looking for an A, the maximum points is 1,000 points. 900 or 90% is an A, 80% is a B, 650 or 65% up till 799 is a C. And so when we are looking at actually kind of creating your grade, think about it. Each time that you are doing reading and video, you're getting rewarded for doing your homework. Now that is part of my grading rubric and my grading key. I fully expect and want you, note your participation grade is 30% of your grade. Your 30% of your grade is because the class is experiential, meaning it requires active involvement. It requires discussion. It requires timely reading and video screenings of the assignments before each class. I will be checking your notes at least, well, probably once a week, and I will be looking, hey, did you do the reading? Did you do the video? And so your participation grade is based upon three things. Did you come to class? Did you actively participate in discussions and in the work that we did while we were in class, our interactives? And did you do the homework beforehand? If you've done those three things, you'll get a huge boost to your grade because slowly we're going to build up points. So every week you'll get a certain number of points for the participation, depending on how long the reading and the videos were for that particular week. Also, beyond this, you will also have a quiz that's due every Friday based upon the work that we've gone over that week in class, in readings, and in videos. So there'll be some questions about all three of those different features that show up. You can take each quiz 2 times. And so if you take it the first time and you don't do so well, go back and relearn. It's the same questions. All right, I didn't understand this particular concept clearly. I need to go back and review before I take that quiz a second time. And so you'll be able to rack up points that way. So every week there's at least 40 points available. There's at least 20 points for the reading and the video assignments for your participation. And there's at least 20 points that are laid out for the quiz that you can actually take 2 times. Oh, I should also mention, even though the class is based upon 900 to 1,000 points, there's actually 1,100 points available. And that's because if you're willing to do a little bit of extra work within the process, I am more than happy to reward you with a higher grade because you're going to learn more because of the way the pedagogical framework of this class works. So there are 2 ways of getting an A in my class. Number 1, do all the work. If you do all the work and bank those extra credit points, those 100 extra points, or close to 100, depending on how well you do on the assignments. If you get B- level work throughout the course, you'll get an A. That's with doing everything. Alternatively, excuse me, you can actually skip any 5 assignments you want besides the midterm, the final, and the project. So any of those daily assignments, any of those quizzes, or skip 1 or 2 of them if you don't do well on a particular assignment. If you know you're not going to do well on the exams, the midterm and the final, and you really know that you're a bad test taker, you could actually bank all those points so when you have a bad test or potentially don't have a bad test, your grade gets infused. So if you use the 5 skips, however, you need to get A-level work in order to get an A in the class. One way that we're going to have you make the world a better place, actually within this class itself, is each team or by yourself, excuse me, let me get a drink. Each team that you'll be doing, and I'll show you 2 of the boxes that show up here. Putting myself out of the way. There we go. Gives you a second to read this. So this is something I'll emphasize in the first week of class. For almost all of you, our education system has failed you. We want you to grow up and compete in a global market with 7 billion other people that you know virtually nothing about. So our semester-long project will then compel you to thoroughly analyze another culture, a non-Western culture, that you have never studied, and teach or mentor that culture to other students to end the cycle of American global ignorance. So we'll be creating a box that goes into a classroom setting. What's amazing is these boxes sometimes get used hundreds of times a year. And so we started this project about 2 years ago, and already about 40,000 students have used these boxes. So you will select a non-Western culture that you believe is important for teachers to teach children and create a box for that grade level. So that box can be on India, it could be on Zimbabwe, it could be on a Native American group, could be something from Latin America, could be any of those different aspects. So that's one thing that we'll talk about more, but that you'll be doing, and I'll be providing more examples about that in the future. And I will tell you actually from earlier classes, many people talk about this as their favorite part of the class, because you'll get to work with me in the kind of capacity as a cultural expert to try to figure out how do we educate individuals about other parts of the world and get them actively involved and actually get to work with children to see how your education is important and plays out in different features. All right. The most important features of this class then. The world is going to be better after our class is over, as you see from our box. Our class is based upon neuroscience pedagogy, so it will be designed to make you learn, as I'll go over in a minute. You will learn the impacts of the arts on our world. I guarantee it if you follow my method. 85% of my students earn A's and B's who keep up with the work. 92% of my students say that they learn more in this collegiate experience than in any other class, and that I'm very proud of. You will work for that knowledge, though. You will learn that you can compete with the best students in the country because we will actually be taking nationalized exams and testing to see how well you do. But the key feature here is you must be willing to do the assignments outside of class, which generally constitutes 3 to 4 hours. So make sure you plan that into the class schedule. I guarantee you almost all of you will think it's worth it. And if you are unable to commit to this time commitment, I suggest you take a different art appreciation, music appreciation class, because that is the requirement on some level to be a great student in order to learn the material. Now, there are 10 pet peeves that students often have, and I want to talk about the way that we limit these behaviors. Generally in this class, we are so interactive that we don't face these, but we still have to go over them within the process. Your first quiz is going to be based upon all this information as well, so pay attention. All right. Number 10, sleeping in class. This is what bothers students. When some people get to sleep and they get credit for being in class, it's not going to be true in this class. If you're sleeping, you will be marked as absent. So you do get 3 hours throughout the semester of unexcused absences for any reasons, no questions asked. It's completely up to you when you want to use those, but you get 3 hours of unexcused. Anything after that, and there is a deduction. So if you're sleeping, cell phone, that's counting as not being part of the class. So if you are tired, we are in an art class, by all means, get up, move, stretch, mini exercise, do yoga. Art students, we almost never sit here in just our seat. You need to sit on the table and the chair. Just don't bother anyone else as you're stretching and moving around. It's supposed to be an open and fun environment. Number 9, particularly depending upon the time of play, eating a type of time of day, eating stinky food in the class. If you've got to have your tuna salad sandwich or your egg salad sandwich with, and then you work in a group afterwards, your friends are not going to like you very much, no matter even if you bring them Machu Picchu. I will always have or try to have breath mints in the class in case you ever forget, so that you don't have to breathe that awful stench over everyone else. Number 8, interrupting the professor. This is not going to be that much of a problem because I want you to interrupt me. If you have things to say, if you have questions that come up, if you know of something that challenges what I'm saying to you, by all means, bring that up. That's what's great about the humanities. There are multiple different perspectives that show up, and sometimes those lead us into the most interesting conversations. I am more than happy to forego a particular conversation if something is coming at that most of us are engaged in terms of, we've had a lot of conversations in China with gender roles that just randomly came up. It was one of the more productive conversations to really understand where China is and how it fits into a global human rights culture today. So we absolutely want to be building those ideas as up. If we ever get too far off topic, I'll say, come see me during my office hours, or let's continue this after class. But generally, it's just fine. Number 7, here's the big one for me. This is the one that bothers me, so mark it down. Every professor has certain pet peeves. This is mine. I do not want to sit in front of the class and lecture to you the entire class like I'm doing on this lovely video right now. I'm also recording all the videos, so you can always go back and see the lecture if we get off track in some capacity. But I need you to come to class prepared. Your late assignments will be deducted 20% late per day late to try to get you to do the work beforehand. This is absolutely a pet peeve because if you come in and say, all right, let's talk about Buddhism and here's an artwork, tell me how this relates to Buddhism. Well, I haven't read the material, I haven't done the video material, I don't actually know what Buddhism really is or the concepts behind it. You can't really do the activity. So it basically involves me telling you what Buddhism is rather than you applying the information. And we know from all the pedagogical neuroscience research, when you apply the information and create new knowledge for yourself, create new neural pathways, you learn 4 or 5 times more than when I just tell you the information and you regurgitate it back. That's the lowest order of thought. It's not that effective. So if you are constantly sitting near people who do not do the work, they are not really helping you. The late assignments without a written excuse. Now, written excuses, if you are late or miss an assignment for a doctor, for a court, for a death notice, those, there's no deduction for it being late. Those are actually legitimate concerns as considered by Miami-Dade College. Number 6, if you ever show up late, and we are in the middle of the activity, just please do not come in and walk over and just join whatever group you're normally in. Because what happens is you come and say, oh, hey, Wilson, how are you doing? Or, hey, how are you? How was your weekend? Now no one is actually doing the project. No one's actually having that critical thing. We've taken everyone out. So if you come in late, please, and we're already in an activity, hold on. I will come over to you. I will introduce you into a group that I think might not be doing as well on a particular activity, or put you in a group that just began for whatever reason. Maybe they all came in late, and I can start you off that way. So that way I can actually spend my time really helping other people critically reflect, think, creatively think within the process, rather than having to re-explain the assignment over and over. If we're just in the middle of a lecture review, by all means come in, and I will gently shout out, hey, here's what we're doing. They're watching this video and they're about to answer the question, so you have an idea of what the question is that shows up. So I should mention, if you come in late, you're also marked as partly absent. And so please make sure you're there on time. Number 5, you see our lovely cartoon over here. Let me call you back. The teacher is distracting me. We see this over and over in the cell phone generation that many of you have grown up in, and the always being on electronics. In this class, that's not going to be possible. If that is something that you really can't do, you'll need to take a different class, because ultimately, unless you're taking notes on the computer, which is fine, we need to be off all the electronics. The human brain is not designed to multitask. And so you really can't do two things at once. There only 2% of the world's population can multitask, as you can see up here. And that's mostly in your generation. Now, that is a terrible, that means 98% of us can't do it. Why? The human brain is not designed to do it. It's not designed to form two complex actions at once. Hold a conversation and listen to someone else with all the things on supposedly new information that they're learning. It just doesn't work. And so I need you to have the Facebook, the internet, text, homework, headphones, cell phones turned off, put away. If they're not, you'll be marked half credit if you're only using it for a little while within class. But if you're using it more than 10 minutes in class or constantly checking, you're just going to be marked as absent. So why did you come? That's one of your unexcused absences. Please turn those cell phones off. In the entire course of this semester, I will only get to see you for about 32 hours. I'm supposed to teach you about the history of 72% of the world's population over the last 25,000 years and make you a global citizen in 32 hours. It's going to be a tough challenge. So every minute you're on the cell phone or kind of interacting with someone else, it just doesn't work. So please turn that off. Now, there are emergencies, and I want to be the compassionate professor. In those emergencies, let me know before class. Like, Fraser, mom's in the hospital. I've got to get this. Sister's giving birth. I want to be the first person she calls. By all means, we want to be compassionate within those processes. Things come up. And when they do, and someone calls or texts you, just remove yourself from the classroom for however long you need to be, so you're not interrupting everyone else in the classroom. So they're wondering, hey, why are they on their cell phone? There's no reason for everyone else to know. So just excuse yourself from the classroom, come back when you're done, and rejoin us within the process. You will notice in the front of the classroom, I never have my cell phone on me. I never do. It's generally up on the table or up in front. And that is because the cell phone for you would be me being distracted. It's not fair for me to say I set a policy that I don't live up to. If I ever do need my cell phone for emergency, I generally will tell you at the beginning of class. I will apologize, say, hey, my daughter is sick. My son is sick. I'm on call in case I need to go get them from school. I'm terribly sorry, and I will apologize to you beforehand. Why? Because then my attention is not 100% on you. And it should be within this classroom, because we want to have a collaborative environment where we work with one another. It's only fair. Number 4, cheating. Clearly, don't do it. It's a class where you are encouraged to try to creatively think, develop your creative problem-solving skills for the future. This is a skill that all employers want. So if you copy anyone else's work besides that aspect, you are going to rob yourself of this opportunity. I'll tell you, I'm a fairly critical of my assignments and what I do. I've actually partnered and worked a little bit with developing Google's training program. So the Google training program, I get to work with Disney on films and cultural consultation. I work with the United Nations and some of their more creative individuals that show up. I get to work with Pier 1 Imports. I travel all the time, really as a consultant, not just cultural, but creativity and how it's used in other parts of the world. I can actually help you with the scale, but I can only help you if you are willing to take a little bit of a challenge. Say, all right, how do I do this? This is something we want to be able to do. If you are caught cheating, and we hate to even bring it up, you can read the policy, but it will result in an F on the assignment, and we will have to report you to academic affairs for disciplinary action. So if you're not sure what plagiarism is, here's our lovely academic dishonesty. The one thing I will point out, plagiarism and academic dishonesty does involve unintentional plagiarism. If you take someone else's work and don't cite it, even if you're not using their words, you're using your words, but it's their idea, that's still considered plagiarism. It's called unintentional plagiarism, and it's still worthy of a failure. Number 3, by all means, put those cell phones away, even if you're cool as Darth Vader. Luke, I am your father. Put those things away, right? Because otherwise you're going to be marked as absent. You're going to get yourself in trouble. If you know right now, no, you are addicted and you can't keep off of it in any kind of capacity, take a different class. This is not the right class because I want to be engaged. There are larger lecture hall classes where I've seen people use cell phones and whip them out, have no issue with it at all. If you pull out your cell phone, I'm going to wonder 2 things. Number 1, wow, I hope everything is okay, because otherwise, why would they have their cell phone out? And number 2, what am I doing wrong that I'm not engaging enough within this process? And so it takes me off my game just watching you on the cell phone and thinking, all right, what else do we need to do? So please let me know if there is an emergency. Number 2, this is actually very excellent for many of you individuals who basically will be taking a lot of college courses where you'll have a midterm, you'll have a final, and you'll have a paper. And if you screw up, and they're each 33% of your grade. If you screw up any one, you already say, crap, there goes my A. You screw up a second one, you're like, oh God, I'm between a C and a D. And you may nail one, and even if you nail one, you still get a C. So this class is based upon building up points to get to 900. Every week you'll be building those points up. Every week you'll have a register in Blackboard that you'll constantly know where your grade is. We have 3 bigger assignments over everything else, but almost everything else is worth 20 points as we're going through. The participation checks are worth 20 points. That will ultimately mean 30% of your grade. The quizzes are worth 20 points, and you can do them twice. That'll be part of your grade. Any other outstanding art activities we have will be 20 points. They're small scale art projects. You have 3 things that you're doing that are larger. You have the midterm worth 10% of your grade. You have the final exam worth 20% of your grade. And you have your project worth about 20% of your grade. And so those are the other big things. But you should be prepared because we will be talking about it and reiterating this information numerous times within the process. Also to help you along, remember, besides the 5 assignments that you get to skip or do as extra credit, please note, you can A, redo any one assignment that you want. B, you get 1 free late assignment on anything you want besides the midterm or the final. C, you can always visit me during my office hours before class to help grade and go through everything to make sure you're on pace. Every few weeks, I'll be evaluating your semester-long box project to make sure you're hitting the taglines and the targets. And I accept late work with a 20% penalty per day late until it's only worth 50%. And then I will accept work worth 50%. The midterm work all has to be in by midterm. There's no work accepted after the midterm and the final exam stuff. And even then, when it's late, I'll accept with a 50% balance from the rest of the post-midterm work. And number 1, talking in class. In my class, this is not much of a difficulty. We're going to be talking all the time. However, we do not want to have private conversations. Now, if you have a little snide comment here and there, you think you have a joke, we always have the cut-ups that show up. A joke here and there, but not constantly, incessantly interrupting the class, the flow of what people are trying to learn. So if that comes up, I'll have to kind of use my silencio charm on you. And lastly, other courses worth noting. If you are ADA, you have a blue card that you actually need extra time, you need to figure out some accommodations. If you want to do this project as part of the Earth Ethics Institute, you can do your cultural box on a culture that specifically deals with the environmental. So I can work with you on various other kind of activities that show up. And we should begin our marathon. This is a quote by Nelson Mandela, lovely individual over here. Nelson Mandela, spectacular. Basically, let's begin our marathon. Can you imagine running a marathon in that Chewbacca suit? Incidentally, my favorite movie of all time. Nelson Mandela says, education is the most powerful weapon for changing the world. It always has been. And he's correct. The cost of a college education, or actually should say the reward of a college education, a bachelor's is worth about $300,000, basically a house over the lifetime of someone who actually, plus all the opportunities that come up. Masters and a PhD are even higher than 300,000. It might be as high as, depending upon what you get your master's and PhD in, then might be as high as $500,000 or $600,000 over someone who just has a high school degree. Education matters, and this education matters because I am training you for a globalized world, which most of you have never been trained in. As sad as that is, our education system has failed you, and I have one semester to try to correct that. The last thing that I want to do then is walk through the way the layout actually works on Blackboard. If you go into our lovely Blackboard website, you will see at the very beginning our RH1 that shows up. So that is our RH1 1000. There is it laid out over here in the columns of all the different weeks. You will note before you get into the weeks, there's the welcome. So we can just use that to click on. And this will give you your welcome, your introduction. There is my grades. You can always check your grades. I generally update grades always within 24 hours of you turning in work. So there's very seldom a day or two that will go by where you don't get a grade from me after you've turned in work. And we're going to have our semester-long projects. And here's the idea of kind of creating those different boxes. It'll be written up in more detail, but we will go over those in week 2 as well. If you go to the week 1, then it will lay out all the work for week 1. Go to week 2, it lays out all the work for week 2. They're all laid out the same way, so let's walk through it. So week 2, we'll start off with. There is always the idea of an overview at the very beginning. These are the major concepts that we will actually be covering in this particular time period. If I skip over to week 3, just to make sure, see how there's an introduction to Hinduism. You will note that the artworks that you see that are here are the most important artworks that we will be covering. I will not have time to cover everything you read and do videos about, but we will actually be covering these particular artworks as we go through in depth, mostly in class, but also in your reading and in your video notes. They are the most important arts for every individual culture. We'll have Why Study India. So this is the introduction. After the introduction, there always will be a weekly reading and video screening. And it will tell you we always have 2 classes. So class 1 is our first class. So if you're in a Monday, Wednesday class 1's Monday. Class 2 is going to be on Wednesday. If you're in a Tuesday, Thursday class 1 is on Tuesday. Class 2 is going to be on the Thursday. It will tell you here are the readings. Note, Gardner's Art Through the Ages, non-Western perspective, chapter on South and Southeast Asia before 1200. Note, I will never have you read an entire chapter in a sitting because that is a wasted experience in most cases. And that's because the chapter idea often can have 30, 40, 50, 60 different ideas. Your human brain capacity is about 10 ideas at once. So once we get you loaded up with about 10 different ideas, it's really hard for your human brain to try to figure out, all right, how do I process this? If I give you more information, you've got to figure out, all right, which 10 do I keep and which one do I jettison? And so we are not really learning if we're giving you too much work within the process. We've got to give you something to do with that. You'll also note if there's ever a primary source reading or something else I want you to read that's not in the book, like here, you're going to read one of the most famous teachings. So a couple pages from the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of Our Lord, an original Hindu text going back the better part of 4,000 years. So we can actually talk about, and this text that you're going to be reading specifically talks about where prayer in the religious world originates. It actually is not a Christian concept. It's not a Jewish concept. It's actually a Hindu concept. So here's what you're doing and taking notes on. Here are the videos that you have. And please note, you will have a variation. Sometimes you'll have a crash course. Some of you may know John Green from films like Fault in Our Stars. We'll have a little bit of Lord Shiva. We'll have a little bit about, note here, finding your passion. And so one that you will always have every week is College Info Geek. There will always be a quiz question on the College Info Geek. These are based upon the best neuroscience pedagogy that we currently have on how to make you learn, how to make you think, how to make you read. And some of you may have never been taught how to read a textbook yet. We're going to teach you how to read a textbook, not just for my class, but to make you a better student, to make you a better employee in the future. If you need to read a report, reading just cover to cover generally is not the best way. There are other ways that will actually teach you how to do it. Class number 2. Here's another set of readings. Again, we're not going to load you down that much more than 10 ideas. And then the 2 masters, you're going to be listening to 2 different masters that are playing Indian music, so we can talk about Indian music. And then we're going to have our change maker of the week. We will generally have a change maker of the week, someone from the non-Western world that has changed drastically the way the world works. And this week will be lovely Gandhi versus Martin Luther King in our epic rap battles of history. You may or may not know that website. So some of it's historically accurate, some of it's not. We'll come back and deal with both. When you are taking notes, I only will ever grade the notes that you are bringing in from the readings and from the videos that you're doing outside of class. I will never grade your in-class notes. That's for you to take, and a lot of the information that you'll need to know comes from the in-class and will support the stuff that you've done from reading and videos. But the notes that you're doing from the readings and videos, I only ever will take from you and look at those ones that are on specific artworks. So for example, this one is about 2 masters on sitar and tabla, but it's not about a specific artwork. Therefore, I'm not going to look at that one. You might have a midterm question on it, so you probably want some notes. You might have, and we'll talk a little about this in class, you might have a quiz question on it, so you want to take some notes. Note, the Info Geek, I told you there is going to be a question, at least one question each week on the College Info Geek. And Lord Shiva is actually the nature of a god. So in these, there's no notes you need to take on these things because they're not about individual artworks. However, if you go to readings, like, oh, in readings, you are going to have, so if I go to class 2, for example, where's my class 2? Class 2, right here. Elefanta, Khajuraho, and Shiva as Nataraja, those are all artworks. So you're going to have 3 write-ups. As you do those write-ups, I do not need paragraphs. I do not need sentences. In fact, the best way of doing this is putting it in a chart or on a note card. Say, here's the artwork, here's the culture, here's the year, and you have 3 questions you have to answer about every artwork. Why did the culture make the artwork? Was it for religion? Was it for politics? What was the artwork for? Question number 2, what's new and innovative? That's why we look at art. It drives the human creative potential forward. What's new? Is it the first time we saw a god in art? It's the first time we saw religion in art. What is it that's new about it? And the third one, often not in your reading or video that I want you to speculate on, even if you don't get it right, is the idea of what's the impact in the modern day world? Why does this particular artwork still resonate? Why is it important today? The artworks that I chose for you to read about all have an impact on the modern day world. So we want to see if you can actually use your higher order thinking skills to take, all right, I've got some information, why they made it, that's generally almost always there. What's new and innovative, that's almost always there. Why are these 2 things? How does this relate to what we know about India or about the modern world? And that's where your brain comes in to make you think, all right, these people have common concerns and different responses to us. So it builds our kind of both our empathy, but our understanding of these cultures as we're forced to think about it. And that is a much more effective way of having you learn and read your notes. After you have the 2 assignments, the next thing up will be your quiz. Quizzes are due on Friday night by midnight. As long as you take it by Sunday night at midnight, there's no penalty. So you can take it anytime during the weekend, anytime during the week that you want. I would highly recommend waiting until we have our class, or if you miss class, you can always go back and watch one of our MP4 video notes. You can see India for Art History 1 is already set up right here for us to watch. So we are set there. So you can take every quiz 2 different times. And so if you really do screw up the first time, go back and take it a second time. Improve the grade. As long as it comes in by midnight on Sunday night, there's no problem. And finally, you'll have my lecture notes that show up. So here's the PowerPoint with voiceover narration. This is basically a full lecture with the PowerPoint. PowerPoint for in-class presentation. Here's the 2 PowerPoints I'll be using as we talk about India that week. Actually, there's a couple of them in this one. And finally, if you want really detailed information, here's all my written out notes that are just in a Word document. If anyone ever really gets lost or falls in love with a particular culture, you're more than welcome to use any format of those. If you go back, one last thing, go back and go to chapter 4, Modern India and Early China, you'll notice the exact same thing. Early China, here's the artworks, here's the layout. You'll all have to come get to know me in an office hour visit, so that's there as well. Then we have our weekly readings. There's class 1 with their videos. Class 2, there's your quiz. And there's the lecture notes. It's all set up for you and ready for you to go. So that you can actually do this at any given point that you want. I hope everything is well, and let me know if you have any other questions. The only other thing is that if you have not already ordered the book, Gardner's Art Through the Ages, by all means, please order that. You will need it right away because we will start having readings right away. By week 3, you'll need to have the book. But just in case you don't, please note, I have actually already digitized Art Through the Ages, the first chapter that we're reading on India. In case your book takes you a longer time to get it, order it right away, but let's make sure it gets to you. So I don't want you falling behind because you don't have access to the book. You have access to the book. It's right here. And so you just have to find the chapters or those pages and those ideas within the book itself. You only ever need to read the pages I'm telling you to read. Any outstanding issues or questions? No? Then have a wonderful night. Bye.